This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law. I'm investigative journalist Molly Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice. Hey y'all, I'm Molly Barrows and welcome to the Gulf Coast Confidential podcast. We would love it if you would like and subscribe if you haven't already. It's pretty easy to do. The button's right there on our YouTube channel. And of course, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, we'd love it if we made the top of the list. So I am your host, Molly, and this is Pam. She is normally our guest co-host here where we cover some pretty scandalous crimes and cases that bubble up right here in Northwest Florida and all over the place because sadly, Northwest Florida does not have a market on crazy, but it happens and pops up everywhere. So today we're going to be talking about a local case. In fact, we put a little teaser video up about this when we took a little road trip over to Crestview yesterday to talk about Jerry Odum. And he's from Milton, dating a beautiful woman from the Destin area. And then he killed her. And we're going to get into that, what his motivations were in just a second. But it's been a fascinating case to follow, and it got a lot of reaction on social media. I think a lot of people, they knew her, they knew of this case. So we're looking forward to diving into some of these details.
Right. I think the reason that people, they know about it, but they don't know about it because it happened during the pandemic and he took a plea. And so it was kind of, pandemic messed everybody up. We didn't know what to think. Court system was messed up and backed up and couldn't be around people. So I really do, this case hits exactly in my heart because it reminds me a lot of my sister's case.
Yes.
It really does. And then because the offender, the murderer, the killer, whatever people say, is the person that we're talking about all the time. And because we didn't get to know Vickie. And we hope through this that we get to share Vickie with our viewers and listeners. And I want people, if they knew her, to, send us an email or let us know, because when we release this in a retro, we can do an update.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. And just in the post alone that I put on Facebook yesterday, as well as TikTok, people have been commenting who knew her and just the outpouring of love and support over and over. The nicest person I knew. She would do anything to anyone, for anyone, I should say, and even was going to donate a kidney before she passed to another woman. But sadly, she was diagnosed with colon cancer. I think it was stage 2, which made her ineligible to donate this kidney. But even on her last day, her brother was saying that she was working the phones trying to find another donor for this woman who she barely knew anyway and was trying to find someone else who could give her a kidney. Yeah,
she's delightful. I looked at her Facebook. I do that, kind of look and see what people are interested in. Her Facebook, even for her business is called The Edge of Paradise. It's a salon, a day spa over in Destin. And it's so positive and it's bright and happy and cool things and encourage you to be healthy and pamper yourself. And then I believe she had gotten a degree in marketing from UWF. So she's like a local girl.
Yeah.
And she's got her own business. She is crushing it.
Yes, I know. And I'm excited to talk about her too. And I hate that this was such a tragic end to her story, but maybe there are other folks who can learn from her. And I think that we're going to touch on some of that, including the very scary world, if you will, of online dating. It's wonderful that it works out for a lot of people, but it also introduces you to a lot of strangers. And sometimes they're certainly not safe. So today we are calling this episode, What in the Murder and Matrimony in Milton? The Jerry Odum story. Of course, we're going back to 2020 when Jerry Odum confessed to killing his girlfriend, Vickie Edge, in August of 2020. They had met dating online, and she, by all accounts from her family as well as friends, she was anxious to be in a relationship. She wanted to get married. She was successful. She'd also raised her family. But like all of us, we think, gosh, wouldn't it be great to have a partner in life or someone else that you can share your ups and downs with and have a relationship with to carry some of the load, if you will, emotionally or just to enjoy life with. So that's what it sounded like to me, is that she was really looking for that. And, I have friends that date online. And they say that they, you have an idea in your mind of what you want. So they kind of go through and find these people that meet the checklist, if you will.
Right.
And I think that makes perfect sense.
Right.
I'm a vibe person. I need to meet somebody in person, and so I don't find that that's a very successful opportunity for me. Right. But not saying that's to knock it for anybody else. But one of the criticisms of online dating, of course, even though really this could be applied to someone that you meet as a stranger as well, but you just don't know much about people. All you know is what they choose to present to you.
Right.
And that's in person as well as online. But, talking about Jerry Odum, just even a little bit yesterday, other people were reaching out to me and messaging me, and a woman who had dated him, and we've got a photo of her, but we've blurred out her face because she did not want her name or her photo shown, but she said, I was dating him right before Vickie Edge. And she said, and so the case has captivated her for obvious reasons. I think she feels like she dodged a bullet.
I think so.
There, but for the grace of God, there goes she. But she shared some concerning things about him as well, but never in a million years, however concerning they were, did she think that he was capable of what he did to Vickie.
Right. And she kind of got some vibes with him too, the selfishness and the grandiosity and the preoccupation with, I used to have a lot of money and I've had money and I got money, and that's part of the problem. But, women aren't necessarily looking for that, but if someone's always saying that, that is a red flag to me. My thought, stay with folks, date them for a year, because anybody that good for 1 year,
that's right,
they're going to cut up next year, go through all the holidays and stuff, meet your family. But see, here we are in the pandemic. Her own people, her peers, you're dating someone and say your friend over here says, Molly, he's kind of weird. But you couldn't do that during the pandemic.
They've all been weird, really. I don't think I'd be surprised by that.
Wait, let me use another example.
And what else? Yeah. And what else?
And
okay.
Like, but anyway, you know what I mean.
Yes.
But she didn't get to have that feedback. And her family, they were close. Her family was close. The reason I say that is because within 2 days of them not hearing from her, she is 59, he's 61. It was during COVID. She had her business down there in Destin, running it fine and doing good. But she got sick with COVID, so she was staying at Jerry's house. I guess he was taking care of her. So this is when this happened. And he was talking about when he's telling the story on here, I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but he's said that they had gone out with some friends and they were on a boat. And so people weren't wearing masks and all that kind of stuff back and forth, whatever it is. You don't want to get in an argument with that stuff. But she got COVID, and he said, well, thank goodness I didn't get it. And I'm like, well, I ain't gonna say what I want to say.
Well, I know. I hear you, but that's the vibe I got too, listening to his tape confession, just some of the other comments that he made, and just talking to other people. It sounds as though he was always his most top priority.
Oh, yeah.
He was uppermost in his own mind all the time.
Right. He was a sensei or a martial arts teacher. He said he had a dojo. This is
in Niceville, right?
I think so. That's what he was talking about. And this is important because later it's just important. But they were at his house. She was getting better. I think she had, remember they said you have to have a positive test before you can go back to work. There's a bunch of hoops
or
to
a negative
jump through.
test.
Right, negative, yeah. Don't go.
Ooh, you're right for spreading some germs.
Right.
Get at it.
I am a pharmacist. I sell more stuff, I reckon.
No, I'm just teasing. I understand.
So you know what I mean.
Yes.
The negative test.
Yeah.
And that's when he said, thank goodness he didn't get it. But he said, I was kind of worried about her. He'd taken her to the doctor during some things. And then on August the 6th, he gets up too. She's fixing breakfast for them. And in the past, he had told her, they'd only met in May, and this is in August, like not hardly even 2 months. He had been telling her, something about $500,000, and I've had money, and I had a business, and he's done is the word. She has, a business, a successful business. It reminds me of Corey Richins kind of stuff, but he's telling her all that and telling her, I'm going to get you a house, let's get married. And it was going to be for the first of the year, 2021. But somehow the date had been moved up to October 24th. And there was no feedback from people going, whoa, whoa. Or her brother said he had seen some of the red flags, like, whoa, slow this down a minute.
But she was so happy he didn't want to rain on her parade.
I know. And see, that's kind. But, so he was telling her all that. He even gave her a magazine to pick out a car, took her house looking at. They went looking at a ring. And he's sitting there just
knowing
taking it
he's
in.
broke.
Right. And just lying. And so they went look at a ring, and he thought, well, maybe $1,000. I'm like, you ain't never been in a jewelry store, I don't reckon. And so it was 14,000 or something. But he's going through all this, and his mind is going, I'm going to get out of this. And never thought, hey, why don't I tell the truth right here? Mm-hmm. Or why don't I just say, I don't want to do this? Because it seemed he had been divorced, and he said he had, I think, $50,000 in his account, and now he had $2,000. Anyway, it's always about the money and what I used to be, and I do this, and I'm a big one at the karate place. I got a black belt, and I teach this, that, and that. So what?
Yeah, there were some posts that we saw and some screenshots that we can share that she had on her Facebook page of being there and getting some pictures of him teaching the kids how to do karate. And he mentioned that was a move that he used on her when he decided to kill her too.
He said, I knew what to do. That's what he told Detective Yoder. He said, I'm getting a little ahead. I'll tell you that when we do it. He showed the technique, how he did it.
Yep, that's right. I heard about that. That's crazy. But yeah, so talking about her a little bit more, it really struck me just how much of a woman of faith she was.
Yeah.
Like when you talked about her boating, there's a picture that she posted at the end of June of 2020, just not even 6 weeks before he murdered her. And she looks so happy and just lovely. She's beautiful and fit and on this boat. And it looks like it's destined. And, as I've mentioned in other episodes, that's my neck of the woods. I graduated from Niceville High School. She was a Chalk-Tahatchee graduate in 1979. I was, 1991. But I certainly knew a lot of folks in the area that had gone to Choctaw. That was one of Niceville High School's biggest rivals, when it came to sports and whatnot. And of course, their main rival was Fort Walton Beach High School. But everybody went out to Destin to go to dinner or to have a drink or whatever. And you did that in Fort Walton. Right. I'm certainly familiar with all of those haunts, back in the day anyway. But it's so, just hearing about that and thinking, gosh, here she is really wanting to connect with someone. That's her goal. And she's a woman of faith and she's praying about it. And even that picture with her on the boat is saying, God is good, loving life, enjoying myself. And I do think about even her brother saying that, he did see some red flags, but he didn't want to say anything necessarily because he hadn't had a chance to really meet the guy and vet him. And you don't want to, assume the worst, that somebody's homicidal and a maniac. But I do think that it certainly rung true with issues in my own life, I would say, when, you talk about something that you may want and you're willing to ignore red flags or something that like maybe it's a career change at some point, or maybe it's just you want to just move to a different house or you want to go wherever, whatever it may be. If that need is out of line with the balance in your life, if you know what I'm saying, like if it's coming from a place of need as opposed to a place where you're free to choose that,
right?
And that's what I feel like in my walk with faith, that's what I try to make the litmus test, okay, Lord, is this something that I am wanting because I'm trying to fill a hole that I'm not letting you fill? Or is this because this is something healthy for me to want and pursue and go after?
Right.
Finally at this point in my life, I'm like, I recognize that certain emotions can sweep you away and it may not be the direction that you need to go. So it's best to take a step back. And that's what I felt like I got out of listening to her story a little bit. People get online, they do want to find love.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have other friends that they just set about doing it. I'm ready for a man, one of them told me. And she was like, I'm going to get on there and just start evaluating, almost like going through resumes and not knocking it.
Yeah.
But, I just feel like, well, what's the motivation there? Are you really looking to connect with someone and build a life together? Or are you in a place that you're free to make that choice? Or can a devil slip in because you're too busy looking and trying to meet it? But I don't mean it critically at all. I'm just trying to think of a silver lining, of sorts.
I mean, it is what it is. It's different in some things. And I mean, and what God's plan is and ours, sometimes we get that mixed up. They say, if God is your co-pilot, you need to change seat,
I don't always want him in the pilot seat now. There are some mistakes that are worth making. I'm like, I'll be back with you.
Take the wheel. So and online dating. And she was looking for love, and that's fun to be in love and stuff. And he had been divorced. He seems like a person, I couldn't deal with him. He's too flaky. He's too crybabyish, too whiny, and we're going to get in that in a minute.
And so monotone. He's just not cute enough to be so monotone.
Freaking tonic.
Right.
With me. That's how I feel it. But that morning, they got up on August the 6th, making breakfast. Well, see, he's been doing all this screwy stuff like, I'll take you, you know, and lying the whole daggum time, you know, take you to look at houses. They wanted to look at a lake house in Defuniak Springs, the magazine with the cars, and this, that, and the other. He goes, hey, he had given her a check for $15,000 a few days before this, and that was for the wedding planner. And he was going in his head, you know, wedding, $50 a person, 50 people, the da-da-da-da-da, you know, that's the business my family was in. So yeah, if you're going to have a wedding, have it, you know, or if you're not, don't. You don't let someone go down a road thinking something, because my indignation with this whole story is that he's acting like she's after his little effed up sum of money he ain't got. She owns a business that is doing fine.
He was lucky to be with her.
He was.
In my opinion, she was the catch.
Yeah, she was. Well, so that morning he gets up and he goes, anyway, he goes, I got another surprise for you. Okay, so she puts a blanket over her head. That might have been how they did it. This is the love part, the love bombing that he's doing, you know. So she puts a blanket over her head. A week earlier, he had gone to Walmart in Milton and bought a Rawlings bat, a metal bat. It looked to be like 24 to like 28 inches, the kid's bat. And it has the price tag on it, $39.97. He had bought that a week before, went through checkout and everything, and on camera and everything. So that morning, after she's got the blanket on her head, he takes that kid's bat, which he's 6 foot tall, and you know, a little kid's bat, you can choke up on that pretty far. He hits her in the head 4 or 5 times, he says. So when you're doing the truthometer, that to me translates to 10 or 12.
Well, he said she was still communicating.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why he had to use the bat to choke her. So it sounded to me like whatever he did, however many times he actually hit her, she wasn't unconscious.
Right. Well, she said, why are you doing this? I mean, just like that, you know, and this is what haunts me. My nephew told me my sister's last words were help, you know, and this lady right here, her killer, told us her last words, you know. And so when he took her down, he used his karate sensei moves, reached around, put that choke hold on her. They fell to the ground. He tries to continue to choke her. And then his hands aren't enough. So he did like this. I used my hands first. Then he said, I used the bat, you know, and I'm pushing down like a bat, like across her neck. And then he said, all I heard was she was she was starting to scream. He said, all I heard was a gurgle or gargle.
Making gurgling sounds. Yeah, and he said he covered her with the blanket because he didn't want to see her anymore.
Yeah, right.
And I thought it was interesting that he approached her from behind too.
Yeah, what a wuss.
Well, it's like you want to, he's fantasized, I feel like in my opinion, about doing this at some point before.
He bought the bat.
I think even before then, I feel like maybe for a long time, this has been in the back of his mind. Because this seems to be a pattern. Even talking to the woman that he had dated before, she said she never had any idea that he could potentially be homicidal, but that they did sit down to watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which if you're not familiar, it's a fictionalized account of the Manson story. You know, he lived out on a farm, if you will, with some of those kids that he ended up convincing essentially to kill people later. But she said that they tried to sit down and watch it, and he talked about it the whole time. He already knew the story so well, she could hardly even follow it. So to me, you know, we have a true crime podcast. Clearly, we're interested in killers as well. Yeah. But it seems to me, listening to him, and even when the investigator was asking him, well, had you thought about killing her? He goes, well, I guess I did. I bought the bat. But he also mentioned even before then that, you know, he had kind of wasn't sure yet. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. But I feel like even with that other lady, you know, he misled her too on some things. So, but there was not the pressure with that relationship as far as like pushing to go ahead and make it formal, pushing to get married, pushing to have a goal in mind for this relationship. I think his goal, it seems to me, with this online dating was just to be a BSer, to get his ego strokes, to go in there and feel like somebody and pretend to be somebody, have a new person to lean on and whine to and complain about and whatever else. He just was just this bottomless pit of need for sympathy is what it sounds like. Yeah. And so that mentality, of course, is going to blame anybody in his life. He's not going to take responsibility for anything that isn't going in the direction he wants to be perceived as.
Right. And I don't know why it did this to me when I heard him in there. He's talking to a Detective Jason Yoder. And let me tell you, that man was probably throwing up in his own mouth having to listen to this BS from this guy. But he did so good. He, you know, kind of did it's not the good cop, bad cop, but like, you're human too.
He made him comfortable.
Yeah, and he told
didn't
everything.
Judge.
Right. Because Jerry had another brother that was an attorney, a criminal attorney, and he has another brother that is a dentist. So he said, my brother, if he was alive, would tell me I shouldn't be talking to you, you know.
And they both laughed. I got a kick out of that too. When Detective was like, those attorneys.
Right, exactly. And then he, the brother he's from Birmingham and he's for Alabama. He's a Crimson Tide fan. You know, the clothes that he had on after he had killed her, he had on some red shoes. He took his red shoes off, set them up on the living room coffee table, took his top or shirt and shorts off, threw them in the washer and changed. He said, I just wiped myself off a little bit with a brown, dark kind of rag. And then that is when he decided, then he took her dog Buddy out for a ride for about 30 minutes. And that's when he decided, I can't stay here with the body. I got to go somewhere.
Yeah, and he drove to Crestview and stayed at a motel there and had a bite to eat. Well, let's take a quick break. We do want to recognize, of course, our favorite personal injury attorney, Joe Zarzar of Zarzar Law. He is an advertiser on Gulf Coast Confidential, and we appreciate his support. And I just want to share a little bit about you. You know, he takes on all kinds of cases. We have been talking to him quite a bit about the case of Dr. Thomas Sheknowski. He is accused of mistakenly removing a man's liver instead of his spleen, which caused him to bleed out on the operating table. That case is still, they're attempting to mediate that right now. So we're going to follow that one. But I just want to share with you a social media post that Zarzar Law put out about another case that they're handling, because, you know, this is one of the reasons why we're so appreciative of his support on the show, because Joe really tries to be that voice for the voiceless, which is part of our goal in telling these stories too, is to really highlight what's happened to victims, and they sometimes get lost in the telling. Well, he keeps folks, I should say, abreast, if you will, of what kind of cases that he's handling, because people can be hurt through no fault of their own in a variety of ways. And this is something that really is a strange case, this poor woman. But in May of 2024, Miss Davison, a kidney transplant patient, went to a local hospital in Pensacola during a ransomware outage. With systems down, staff were using paper records and mistook her for another patient. She was given a CT scan with contrast dye, which destroyed her transplanted kidney. Now she's on dialysis for life, he says, can't get another transplant, and still has to take immunosuppressants. Am I saying that correctly? Immunosuppressants, all from a preventable error. And he says that they are pursuing justice on her behalf. So we are appreciative of Joe's support of these victims, as well as his support of this show. And I certainly hope that she can find the justice that she is seeking. That's just a tragedy.
Yeah. And it's so wonderful to have someone to speak up, and not just speak up for you, fight for you.
Yes.
Because corporations got attorneys for days. They keep on retainer. I mean, they're just there. But, you know, justice is the only thing that keeps the problems going, basically, is people not speaking up.
Well, and if there's a systemic problem that's causing these mistakes to be had, that needs to be addressed.
Right.
And I think that's what he's trying to address, for example, in the Sheknowski case as well.
Well, it seems kind of similar, doesn't it?
It does. It's very similar. And of course, he's active in the community too, very generous. And so we're going to continue to follow Joe. What is that? The Freezies?
This is on Tuesday. On Tuesday, the rest of this month and the first Tuesday in August, Joe gives these freezies. These are the shaved ice. Like I say every time, this ain't your grandma's snow cone. You know, this is a freeze.
That's a hefty amount too. I do like it.
Right. All kind of flavors, and I think you can mix them and stuff like that. But it's absolutely free. And Tuesdays, 2 to 4, got to be somewhere anyway, go there and just get you. Because I saw a lot of folks that work downtown with taking a break to come over there. Grown-ups, kids, whatever. He wants everybody to come. And it's kind of sweet. I sat there and, you know me, I'm like looking at business stuff all the time. About 50 people had come in that 15 minutes that Stella and I were there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And they were happy. And there's a little cooling off place right there. And people are talking. I mean, I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's a great idea. All right. Well, thank you, Joe, and Zarzar Law for continuing to support Gulf Coast Confidential. Now we'll pick back up where we were talking about the case of Vickie Edge, who was murdered by Jerry Odum. And we're at the part of the case kind of recounting what happened, and that he had left after he murdered her. was driving around with the dog, basically didn't want to be in the house, is what he told the investigators. He didn't want to be in the house with her body. And again, he just speaks in these monotonous tones the entire time. There's no inflection of like, oh my goodness, what have I done? There's no, I'm really, really sad about what I done. Just completely deadpan, almost like, flatline, if you will. But there's never any change as far as like who is his number one priority, and that is himself.
Right. Well, and then that's when, he's just literally like catatonic, just all about him, like he's narrating a story. And it's not even a good story because it's just too much. He said the body, and instead of her or whatever, that's why he put the blanket. He just
dehumanized her in every way.
Right. And I have a feeling every time they were going out, because he had said one time when he's talking to Detective Yoder, I did nice things for her. I took her to Jacko's once, and it's $113 and then the tip, and I give her flowers and candy and stuff like that. This lady has a business. She don't need your flowers and candy. She was looking for love, and you were lying all the time. And so he thinks that, and that's what this other lady had said too. He tried that love bombing, and I'm like, maybe I'm an ass or something, because like that ain't enough love bombing for me.
Right.
That's just
it's a lame love bombing.
What is that?
You're gonna have to get up a little earlier in the day.
Yeah. But my point is, he just barely tries at everything. Just barely makes it. I'd be ashamed.
And still wants like a Macy's Day Parade when he does.
A hero cookie. I'd be ashamed before God to tell that, got up and had breakfast. She cooked breakfast, and then I decided, surprise, then I'm going to beat her with a bat, and then I can't stand to be here with what I did. I'm going to drive the dog around. Then I'm going to go to Crestview and get a hotel room, and I'm going to mosey on down the hill, go get me some Mexican food. Then I'm going to come back up, and I'm going to watch a little TV, and I'm going to go to sleep. Now think about that. Could you do that?
No. And that's what was so concerning when he ended up telling the police and we'll talk about that in just a second, about how the brother was so instrumental in really bringing it to law enforcement's attention. But it's almost like he just wanted to pull that ostrich approach, just that head in the sand. And there were just some disturbing details about all of that and how he tried to keep the police at bay. But one thing that struck me that I want to touch on before we move on that was when he was talking about killing her and how he was beating her with the bat, and she was asking why, and they decided to choke her, and the police were basically saying, well, why that particular method? And he said, well, I thought she was starting to scream, so I wanted to shut her up, essentially, is what he said. And that's why he started choking her. But he thought, if I shoot her, then that is going to create noise, and there's also going to be messy, and I didn't want to have to. I mean, it was just so cold and calculating. It's just little details like that. And again, I'm obviously not an expert. But that's the kind of thing that makes me think she was not the first woman that he fantasized about murdering.
No, I don't think so. And that with it being messy and everything, he didn't even take a bath or a shower. He just wiped himself off. There was blood on the recliner, blood around under her, and I guess he tries to get women, gonna come clean up, you're gonna take care of me, and this, that, and the other. I can't think of anything more terrible, but that was the way he did. And he still did it. So that shows what he did. He still did it. Even some murderers at least have the sense to pick stuff up or something. I mean, he just is no effort Joe.
I know. And then it doesn't see anything wrong with it.
No, because it's, my saying, we do what works for us. This has worked for him for years and years and years. This poor lady got caught in this web of dysfunction and his narcissistic type traits. I'm the hero, I'm the victim, I'm the martyr, all in one.
And nothing's ever his fault.
Right, never. So that's what happened. And then he finally goes, we're back at the hotel in Crestview. He finally goes, well, I guess I need to go back and check on her. What? Okay. He's coming back, but then he kind of walks around his neighborhood, takes the dog for a walk, walks around the neighborhood, talking to people, and he tells, what time is it? What time is it? What time is it? And they're like, so I got to go check on Vickie, acting like she's alive there. Think how pathological this is. And so they're like this, that, and he's checking in, making sure, he's trying to work out his defense, I guess. And then at one point he was out and he said one of his friends' dad had ordered pizza. So I got this pizza here. I mean, he literally went to their house, had pizza with them, and then went back to the house. And this is all the way from about 10:30-ish in the morning up till when the brother, Derek, comes. brother and his wife. The sister-in-law is real involved in this too. She's the one that called 911 and was trying to talk to the 911 operator. The 911 operator was getting a little ahead of herself, or it was frustrating or something, but I love how calm she stayed and how polite the sister-in-law stayed. Derek's beating on the doors. They see her car in the driveway with no tag on it. It's her red car. So they know she's there.
Well, and the way they had to find her, they knew she was at his house, but they didn't know what his address was. So they basically looked it up, found an old address for him, went by that house, and they were like, here's where he's staying now. And that's how they end up at the house. And they're driving around, and then they see her car there, and the license plate's gone, and they start calling police, like to your point. And I did think she did a remarkable job staying calm. It's hard to be concerned about something like that and have to answer all these questions.
Frustrating.
Yes, I thought she stayed patient. But yeah, the other part that I thought was interesting is when Jerry Odum calls 911 and says, there are people around my house and I don't know what they could possibly be wanting. And it reminded me a lot of your ex-brother-in-law because, of course, I've read so many reports about that. If you've not followed Pam's case, Mommy Killer, there's an entire playlist on Gulf Coast Confidential. So I advise you to check that out and it'll explain in more detail. But Sharon Adelot was murdered by her son, Brandon Adelot. And technically I should not say murdered. I know he killed her and he was tried for murder, but he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. And his dad was never charged with that crime, wasn't even accused of it, but they had gone through a nasty divorce a couple of years earlier. There had been just domestic violence injunction against him for at least a year. And there was some other concerning behavior. He had not been arrested or charged. Basically, they couldn't find enough evidence, they said, to prove it, but there's more to that story too. But he'd lost his job for sexting several hundred texts to a 14-year-old girl in a science class. But it was very much when he was confronted with this action, to me, the same sort of monotonous, deadpan reaction, like, I'm going to get out of it, Sharon. Why are you giving me a hard time trying to hold me responsible for this and do the right thing? Essentially, I'm going to get out of it if you'll just be quiet. Everybody else around me is trying to help me get out of it. Why aren't you trying to help me get out of it? Nothing is their fault.
Never.
And it's just this deadpan way of kind of like approaching things.
And I think that's what lights that up in me is because I've seen that and it works for something, but the currency and the cost shouldn't be Miss Vickie Edge or Sharon Hill Adelot, but this person over here, he's worrying about money and a house. Well, you're at the Gray Bar Hotel for the rest of your life, and you took her life, and I don't
feeling like a victim and calling the police, knowing full and well that's her family that's out there looking for her, knowing that people were going to come, but yet he's got this victim tone on the phone, like, I don't know who this could possibly be. And I'm, walking around the house, I'm scared, like, and she's telling him at one point, where I'm on the phone with the sister-in-law. And he goes, oh yeah, I know that. But she has to basically drag it out of him before he admits, oh, well, I guess it could be. And she goes, you don't want to tell them? They want to know what happened
to her, to his sister.
Right.
Well, and I find it very funny too. If you're a black belt in karate, you're typically not afraid of folks at your own house. And most people, if you're knocking like that and you think it's her brother, he's so dumb. This was all dumb. And so Derek's going around the house. I know it. Eventually, he's going to break the window and get in there because they hear Buddy, the dog, barking like crazy. He has left Buddy.
And that's her dog.
Right. He has left Buddy with her, as he calls, the body, but with Vickie while he's gone to Crestview and then comes back next like he's taking care of him. But Derek and his wife are going nuts. The car's right there. So eventually, even the 911 goes, well, let him in or talk to him or something. That's when I think he knew this got real because they're telling him. And then so the police come there and they're like, they're knocking on the door real hard. He sees them. So it's very dramatic. You see the garage door open, and there stands, guess who?
Yes, Jerry Odum. And he says, I have something to tell you.
Yeah. And he said, they said, where's Vickie? And he said, she's in the house, but I've got something I need to tell you first. She's been dead for 2 days. Just catatonic, deadpan, like that.
And then the other thing that got me about that, when they were had him in the interrogation room and they were asking him about the crime and they were talking about, him basically confessing. And he said, well, it feels good to get things off your chest. Well, like, dude, you didn't run over somebody's pet on accident. You didn't steal money from their account. You took this woman's life. And he just recounts why. Again, that monotone, deadpan, feeling sorry for himself. Well, she just was wanting to get married and I just went along with it. And then it got to be where he was about to get called out on all his lies. He had given her a $15,000 check for the wedding planner and to get started on the wedding. And then he just didn't, he knew the check was either going to bounce, or he certainly knew it was going to bounce. And then if he didn't tell her beforehand, he was in a quandary.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. Well, and then the check, he says when he's talking to Detective Yoder at some point, he's like, well, the check, I tore it up and I flushed it. You know, so I figure he went back and got in her purse. I don't know this to be for sure, but if he gave her the check before and she had been sick and hadn't cashed it yet, and he said he was able to do that. But, I mean, what is wrong with saying, I don't want to do this or I don't have the money for that? You can go to Vegas. You can get a Elvis wedding. You can elope. You can say, let's do this later. Hey, how about the truth? This man has not paid his taxes in 16 years and damn proud of it. Tells that first thing to Detective Yoder. He goes, they say, tell me what happened. He goes, well, it all started, I got divorced about a year ago. I had $50,000 in the bank. I ain't paid my taxes in 16 years. That is how this knucklehead started.
It's all about him. Just how it's impacted him.
So what's Detective Yoder supposed to go, oh, okay, never mind then.
Well, I sure understand. You were full of crap and you lied, and now your whole image that was built on lies is about to crumble, and you're going to kill her in order to avoid reality.
Right.
And that's just such a, I mean, it's not even smart.
No, that's what I mean.
It's not realistic.
He's a black belt, teaches karate. He is 6 feet tall, and he is, when he's with men, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I want to sit down.
I've noticed that too.
And
that's
when
the way
Derek's
your former brother-in-law was
exactly.
too.
This is why I see this stuff. Derek, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm going to tell you everything. And it reminds me of Chad Dorman. You know, he's the one that shot his 3 kids.
And Chris Watts.
Right, Chris Watts. And it reminds me of Sarah Catherine Boone and Corey Richins, and just mix all those people together. And
well, basically, they're bullies. And then when they get around somebody who they don't perceive as someone that they can lie to or push around or try to con, then suddenly they're like, hat in hand, oh gosh, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy. He even had a tattoo with her name put on his arm. He did everything. It's not like this lady was not understanding, but he just wasn't communicating. And see, like, that's what's worked for him. But I do not want this story to be about, like, she was chasing after him for
she
money,
was not.
or this, that, and the other.
Right.
She was in love. She was a beautiful person. And I mean, you know, that's what I get upset about, is when the story twists around and it becomes all about this person. I don't care about him. You know, she was lovely, and he, like we said before, he got the prize.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And it sounds like the only thing he really wanted out of these relationships was just to be perceived as somebody. You know, again, they were just almost like a source or a supply of sympathy or adoration if he could pretend to be something that he wasn't. But then he just wanted to, like, leapfrog it, like going on to the next lily pad. But he just didn't have the character, to say the very least. Aside from being a killer, he was thinking, gosh, why wasn't the truth ever on the table? Because I feel like this is what he wanted.
Right.
This was what he wanted, the excuse to move this way.
Right.
As stupid as it sounds to us, for him, I think he was like, finally.
Right. Well, the truth never was an option. I didn't know how to get out of this. I didn't know what else to do. He says that so many times. Or he might as well just said, I didn't want to put the effort. Nobody's as important as me. I'll kill you if you're in my way or whatever. And I spent $113 at Jocko's or Jayco's or whatever it is. I'm like, well, you got off easy, bro.
Yeah, he absolutely did. Well, and my heart breaks for her family, you know, and I think that is one of the silver linings that they wanted folks to know, is just be careful of online dating. And that's why I shared a little bit about what I said earlier. But I do feel like, especially with her being such a woman of faith, and that's important to both of us too, you know, love is such an important part of all of our lives, whether it's family love, friendships, but romantic love, that just seems to get, as we've done on many episodes, and including our deep dives, you know, I think we just have so many personal needs that maybe we apply to these relationships and pile on these expectations of this relationship is going to fix something, or if it's going to, you know, be the cherry on top and my life will be perfect. But, you know, when you have to rush something like that, you know, and again, he was being dishonest. She was not asking for any of those things, you know, but he was not telling her, I don't really want to get married. I'm not as wealthy as I, you know, as I presented myself to be, but I do care about you, because he never did did care about her. And people can say anything, you know,
Yeah, they can.
But it's their actions that obviously eventually really reveal what their character is like.
Yeah, love is so sweet, and it's about the reason it wouldn't work with him is because it's about being bigger than me. You know, it's about everybody. It's spiritual, and we're not against love or anything.
Right.
And we only know what he said. We don't know that she was saying, "Let's do this now." She might have just been being polite to him too. You know. The lady had COVID. Folks were weak during COVID times and stuff. She was up getting ready to go to work. You know, I just can't even get this out. I can't get this out of my head.
I know. And then she never saw it coming and even put that blanket over her head thinking it would be like cute, fun, flirty, you know, as lovers do kind of a thing. And then he just used that as an excuse to whack her with the bat. And that's just unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
Nobody deserves that, but certainly not somebody who's trusting someone else to be a lover, a caretaker.
And once you put your hands around someone's neck and looking in their face and you take their last breath and then you do more, I mean, you have to be diabolical. You have to be a monster.
Well, absolutely, because he could extend sympathy to the dog. He didn't mind the dog barking.
Or the grown men.
Yeah, that's true. Well, any final thoughts for you, Pam?
I just, God bless Vickie Edge's family. And if people have information and comments and things they'd like to share about Vickie, I would love to hear them, because we release these episodes again later, like a year later. And when we do our retro episode, I'd like to update it with more things about Vickie.
Yes, and what's the best place for people to reach you?
At PamelaHillYah@AOL.com.
Excellent. You can also find us on Facebook. We both have pages there. She is Pie Pie.
Yeah, I'm Pie
Pam
Pie.
Hill Pie Pie. But yes, and feel free to reach out to me as well, Molly at mollybarrows.com, as well as social media. So, and if whether it's this case, comments about Vickie Edge, or any topics that you would like to hear about, we would love to hear from you too. So anyway, well, Pam, thank you so much. And my heart goes out to Vickie Edge and her friends and family as well. And I know that wherever she is surrounded by love now.
She's an angel.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, thank you so much, Pam. And we thank you so much for joining us. That is it for What in the Murder and Matrimony in Miltonthe Jerry Odum Story. We appreciate you joining us on Gulf Coast Confidential. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Molly Barrows, with co-host and researcher, Pam Hill. And a big thanks, as always, to our director, editor, and production engineer, James Roy. And remember, you can listen to more of our Gulf Coast Confidential conversations wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And you can also watch on the Gulf Coast Confidential YouTube channel. Just don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. This episode is brought to you by Zarzar Law.